Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Coffee Talk. I'm Rochelle Dene Poth. I'm excited today to have another one of our awesome Buncee ambassadors here, Don Sturm, who I've known for a couple of years through Buncee and through 4 O'Clock faculty, and just like so many awesome things that he's sharing every single day. So I'm excited to have Don here with us today. So welcome to Coffee Talk, Don. And if you could, let everybody else know a little bit about you, your background, your professional journey.
Yeah, thanks, Rochelle, for having me on. And I feel like I'm on an episode of Saturday Night Live with the Coffee Talk. So my name's Don Sturm. I am my official title now is Technology Integration Specialist. I work for a district in Central Illinois, Morton School District. This is my 29th year in education. I was a high school social studies teacher for 23 of those 29. And so I've been doing this position for the last 6 years. And it started off as really purely tech and integrating that. And now it's become much more than just like, I think what we know deep down is it's not the tech. It's truly instructional practices. I just try to figure out when are those times that tech makes the most sense. And so my job has kind of shifted over the last 6 years to be much more of an instructional coach. Still have that because we're a one-to-one iPad district. We've got about 3,500 students, so all of them with iPads.
And I was just going to ask you, I was going to say so what role does technology play in your daily life? Which clearly it's a huge part of it. And I'm sure that you've seen that has changed so much over the last 5-10 years, or however long we've both been in education. But something that's interesting about you is every day you share something very creative. It pushes our thinking. It makes us reflect when you create with your Buncees. And so I'd love to ask you, what gave you that inspiration to do that? Because before you were doing quotes for a while too, but now you have this whole other element to it. So what led you to start that?
Yeah, I never considered myself, I always considered myself an effective teacher. I don't know that I considered myself a creative person. I always equated creative with artistic. And now I've come to realize they're not one and the same. You can be unbelievably creative and not have the artistic bone in your body. And so it was one of those where I found Buncee, and I don't even remember how I found Buncee. I just came across it in my job and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I started messing around with it and shared it with some teachers. And then I started this. In fact, I just looked before I got on here. I am 8 short of 400 daily Buncees. Now I use Buncee for all kinds of things beyond that, but 400, I went 300 and I think I said, 92. And it just became this challenge that I am going to get better at this. We talk about grit and perseverance and the stick-to-itness. And so I am going to keep doing this. And what I found was that it became this enjoyable experience because I get a quote and then I have to figure out, okay, how am I going to represent that quote in some way? Buncee is my platform. And then I just start creating. And I think, not to pat myself on the back, but I think I've actually I'm happy with where I'm at. I try to get better. I'm at that plateau where I feel like, okay, I kind of okay, I always put the quote on the right-hand side, or I always make a box on the right-hand side. So I try to start changing, and it's changed the way I think about things. Mm-hmm. I visualize things much more. When I read something, I'm always visualizing what image could I make with that? So that's kind of where it started. I don't know. Yeah. And I have missed a few days, but not many. It's funny, kind of as a side note, the badge, I'm not a big badge person, but I've started noticing the badges, and I don't do it on the weekend, but I want to get those 10-day in a row, 20-day in a row, 30-day in a row. As many Buncees as I've made, I don't have those badges because I don't do it on the weekend. So I almost need to
You
do one
do.
on the week. I need to do them on the weekend so that I can get those badges. But
Well, yeah, there are so many things that you just said there that resonate with me, and I'm going to go back. I should do the recency and primacy because I probably, for everything in between, but the creativity and then being artistic, because for me, for years, like I was told in ninth grade, I was so excited to take art class. And I remember like on the third or fourth day of school, and I've written about this too, like the teacher said, "Oh, you're not going to do very well. Like that's really not a good
yep.
drawing." And I still have the drawing. And so from then on, like it's not that I didn't try. I just figured, okay, I don't have the artistic skill. And I did equate that with being creative. But when you find this platform, which Buncee, and I totally agree with you, like I don't exactly remember how I found it, but I'm so glad that I did, because like from then until now, if I go back and I look at the first Buncees, they were not really creative, but it's evolved over time. And like you see yourself, and you can definitely give yourself a pat on the back. I mean, if you weren't like halfway across the country, I would give you a pat on the back, because yours really are, like, you can see so much of how you're visualizing in them. And other people have said that too. And so I think they're pretty awesome.
Well, and thank you. And sometimes it's what I'm really starting to get to now is, am I being like, I'm a self-reflective person, probably to a fault, maybe, but I'm always like, okay, like I want to try to do one that's not a literal representation of the quote. And then I'll start it and I'll be like, boy, I don't know how to do that. And I'm doing this in the morning. This is my morning routine. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. Normally I don't have a quote the night before. Sometimes I'm thinking about if I'm reading, and I'll open my Kindle up and say, oh yeah, I really like this quote, or somebody says something in 4 o'clock faculty, the Voxer group, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna, do that. So I'm drinking coffee and thinking about this over about a half-hour span of time. And there are times where I do get frustrated, and then I have been like, okay, I just have to do a literal thing. I just like today's, for instance, I wanted to do something that didn't have a boat in it, but I could not think of how to represent that quote and not have a boat in it. So,
Right.
But that's the thing. I think, to me, that's what I'm trying to impart to teachers. Not just, I mean, like I said, I love Buncee, but whatever you're using, don't just let kids try things one time.
Right.
Don't use that. That's kind of a cop out. Oh, my kids didn't like that, and so you stop them from using it. And it's like, no, you really need to let kids do something over and over and over again before they realize whether, one, they're going to be good at it, and two, whether they do like the platform. I mean, I would never stick with Buncee. Like when people say, oh, like, why do you like Buncee? And I'll explain it. I'm like, you know what? You don't do 400 of these and not like
Right.
the platform. I would have long changed the platform had I not liked that process.
Right. And it's funny because when you were saying about the badges, I remember creating so many days in a row. Like at school, it was my thing at school. During my lunch, I would sit down for a little bit, and every day I would make a Buncee with a quote, and you'd see the little badge pop up, and I was like, oh, right. But then next thing, you get called away during your lunch or something. And so you lose that streak, and I'm like, no, but, yeah, it's fun to create. And the one you had today with the boat, I thought was beautiful. And there was one that had about the students, like, and they're always watching. You never know when they're watching. You had all the eyes and everything. I really like that one.
I wondered if that one, I even asked my wife, is that a creepy one? I mean, like, there was something about it that was creepy, but I'm like, it's true.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, they are. I mean, every morning when I see them, and I'm so glad you tagged me in them, because then I don't miss them, but just, it makes me think, like, I wonder what you were thinking when you put this together, but then trying to just see the process. And so I think that's what's most interesting. And, I would love, and I know everybody else would love to see some of the ones you've created. You have made a lot of Buncees, because before we were talking, I saw that number of Buncees that you have. That's unbelievable. You definitely love Buncee.
Oh, I do.
I
And I mean, and I talk about it all the time. And I know, like, I'm known, sometimes I'll walk into a classroom and the kids are like, there's the Buncee man. And and I use it for the graphics more than anything. But I mean, I put my tutorials on it. Like if I'm showing somebody, hey, here's how you update to the new iOS, I will plop the YouTube video in there. It's just a great,
right.
I mean, what I like about it is that, and I was talking to Marie about it, it is a one-stop shop. You don't have kids. There's a time and a place to teach about how to cite sources and and how to attribute sources. But in Buncee, if you want kids to do something quick, you don't have to worry about that. I mean,
Right.
it is all right there, and they're not what I call tab surfing or tab jumping, trying to, okay, I've got to copy this picture and go here, and then they're copying and pasting stuff that is not, they really shouldn't be. It's, copyright protected, but but yeah, I mean, I'd love to show
Yeah.
you some, and I always like that that idea of deconstructing. I did at one point. I actually recorded the whole process one morning, and I'll maybe have to retweet that again, and
Yeah.
then played it in fast motion. And it was interesting to see, because there are times where I'll get the whole thing almost done. I'll be like, yeah, I don't like that. And then I'll go back and redo something. So, you want me to share my screen then?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. And I guess what I would start with, and I always do this. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So when I first started, and I don't know that these are completely in order, but I would take, like, maybe, I don't even know what this one is. Let's just take this one. This is how I started with Buncee. I really like this by Walt Disney, and this was just a Buncee background. And so I put that on there, and I was like all proud of myself. I'm creating something on the web, and I'm sharing it. And then I was like, okay, I can do more than that. And it just got down to, I mean, you can see them here. I don't know if you want me to look at one of my recent ones.
Yeah, anything.
Well,
But I
like the
will.
one, for instance, the one today
Uh-huh.
is, and I want to make sure that I actually, let's see, let me move this thing out of the way. I'm going to edit this, but I'm going to, that's the other thing I've learned is to, I'm going to duplicate this page so that I don't mess it up.
Always a good
But
idea.
this is, and I always tell people, like, this is along that right-hand side. This is the Buncee. And so what I show kids or teachers is, it's that idea of, okay, when I visualize, I don't know, it's hard to say, here's how I visualize it. But the fun for me in Buncee is to try to figure out, okay, how do you get that water? So I go in and search for water, but then when you see it, and I'll just move all these things out of the way, when you see it, all this is the same graphic twice. And then I just mess around with the size of things to get it to look either layered. My favorite part of this one is this graphic right here. And this is, to me, the fun part of Buncee. Because of that layering, I wanted the sun, and I want it to look like it's coming out of the water. So I always tell the kids, like, with layering, if I do that, I don't like that. So we're going to move that underneath the waves. But then I was like, it needs to have something more like shiny. And I remember, I've used this a few times. I remember this lamp. This is what that's what it looks like when you search for it.
Oh, that's
And
very
so to me,
interesting.
then I'm like, okay, I don't really care that that's a lamp. I like the light. Now I'm going to expand this. Now I'm going to put this here, and I adjust it just right. And then again, I tell the kids, okay, if you do this, well, that looks ridiculous. So now you just start hiding it, and now you'd have no idea there was a lamp behind there. And that's what I enjoy about this whole process, and the layering, and just being able to take something that's not what this was designed for. I would imagine the people who are the graphics people for Buncee never thought, oh, somebody's going to use this as the sun rising.
Right.
And so that's now where my visualization comes from. How can I use something that I find that is not really meant to be used for that? I don't know if
That is, like, really creative. I mean, I didn't know that was a lamp. I actually thought, I don't even want to say what I thought it was. I thought it was a spaceship, just upside down when I first looked at it. But the way that you do that and you layer it, it's like, amazing.
Yeah,
Like that's the only word I can
thank you.
come up with.
And that's the part that for me that I'm very proud of myself, because what I do is I sit down, and I can remember this morning I was like, okay, I want to make that shine. And so I was like
Mhm.
typing in shine, and I'm like, okay, well, there's some stuff here, but that really doesn't, I don't know that any of this fits. So then I was like, well, I'm going to do a light, and I don't remember. I think it was here. And then, or when I got to this one, I'm like, oh yeah, in fact, I know what it was. I saw this one right here, and I'm like, oh wait, there's a lamp that Buncee has. And that's another thing. The more you use it,
Mm-hmm.
the more that I understand the graphics that are there. I bet you, I mean, I've used Buncee so much that if somebody showed me like, okay, these 5 images, which one is not in Buncee,
Oh yeah.
I could probably pick it out. Maybe I haven't seen it, but I know just the style of it. And so then I typed in something else and got that. I don't know if it's here, but anyway, I got that lamp. And I'm trying to think, because I've started doing that more and more. Well, like on this one, the wind was the other thing. I'm like, how do I represent the wind? And in this case, it was just, well, we can move this ship out of the way. It was just a shape. So when I went to do this and shape, I kind of started there. And at first I was like, ooh, I like these sine and cosine waves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I add that, I had a white background and it looked perfect. As soon as I changed the background, I could see this. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't like
Okay.
that. I have to come up with something else. So lo and behold, there's another shape that is waves. And so I mess around now too with the opacity.
Mm-hmm.
So when you put this in, if like I've got the opacity at 30%, that's what it looks like at 100. Well, that, I don't know, that just seemed too dominant. So let's move that to 30%. And so that's what I enjoy about it. Just that idea of messing around, and I do a lot of fine tuning
Mm-hmm.
of things. Like I'll get the main idea out there, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do this and this. This was kind of an interesting one because I I was trying to find a blanket. Like I knew this is what I visualized in my head. I'm like, I have no idea if there's somebody laying down. Like no idea. And I think this is a relatively new graphic. And so it was just kind of cool to go through and start figuring out, okay, how can I get, what size does this have to be in order for this to be, like realistic? And I've got tunes coming out of this radio, and I don't know, it's just that to me it is the way that I spend my morning. And it kind of grounds me, and sometimes it frustrates me, but
Yeah, but the thing about it too is that you're so intentional about doing that every day, and obviously it's good for you. I mean, for educators, we're so busy, in that kind of forces you to like take moments for yourself where you're enjoying and you're creating. But not only are you doing something that's benefiting you, you're benefiting everybody else that you're sharing that with, and that in itself is just so powerful that you continue to do that, and then you're connecting other people. Like so, it's while you look at it like, oh, I'm just creating on my own, the impact of that is so far reaching because you're sharing it. And it's I mean, it's just like, it's awesome to see. I mean, technology, like you said, I mean, it's not always the answer, and I mean, it's what's the purpose. But in this case, like being able to share your like creativity and your ideas and all of that with so many other people, it's just, I love it.
yeah. And again, I appreciate that. I'm to the point now where I really do this for me, but I am such a believer in Twitter and social media that it's like, why would I not put this out there? And why would I not get some feedback? And nobody ever says, oh, that's a horrible Buncee. But I often wish there were people that would be like, oh, have you ever thought about doing this, to give me other ideas? This is another favorite of mine. And it's funny because this looks so simple. This frustrated me beyond belief in the morning. I mean, I can distinctly remember this Buncee, and I was like, okay, I love this. I read it in a book, and I'm like, okay, how do I do this? And if you look at the different parts of this, it's all these lines. So there was no graph like that. So I thought, okay, I'll do these kind of ups and downs. I did this shape with a graph, but then at first I didn't have these. And that's the other thing I do all the time is forget what I'm grabbing a hold of. But like this one, I just had these points, and I was just about done, and in fact, I think I took a screenshot of it to do it. And I was like, oh, that looks boring. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to find something that represents how you would feel at each one of those. And I was really deliberate, like this one, when you're given a task, I'm doing the ISTE cert, like you're going through. And there's that beginning part where I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? And then I'm sure I'm going to kind of have those ups and downs. So when I got done with this one, I was like almost strutting around like, okay, I kind of like this. But it's just, on one hand, it looks very simple, but there was a lot of thought process that did go into that.
Yeah, and you talk about ISTE. We're both doing the program now and looking at all the standards, and just even, with Buncee, obviously you can address all of the standards for students by using Buncee, and the process that you go through, what looks simple actually is not all that simple, especially when you add more and more things to it and your whole right side is lined up and you have all the layers.
Yep.
I, like you, many times I get everything set and then I accidentally put it and it moves it, and then the frustration comes. You're like, no,
yes,
I didn't mean to do that.
Yep. I wanted to show, and you're going to have to tell me to stop talking because I can keep going, but I wanted to show you one of my favorite ones. And of course, I'm going to probably scroll past, and if I can't find it, that's fine. But it was about the idea of failure, and it's like two robots. And like I said, if I can't find it, it's not that big a deal, but it was one that I liked because it was one that I really struggled with, and one that I thought, okay, how do I represent this idea of iteration? And I don't know, I can't find it right off the top here. But
well, you have like 800, right? So
well, yeah, this one,
and they're beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I thought this is another one that I really like, and I was thinking of Stranger Things. We had just gotten done with Stranger Things, and I was sitting here and I liked this Angela Watson quote. I was like, oh man, I'm going to do a Stranger Things one. So I'm going to have the upside down world of, that idea of compliance versus exploring and being creative, or, the curiosity aspect. So, like I said, I could keep talking about, because each one of these, it sounds corny probably, but each one of these is like I spent time, like each one of them is a creation, and there's some thought process that goes into it. And so you are like, kind of like when you write, or I'm not a painter, but when you paint, it's like, oh, well, here's why I painted this. I could tell you a story about the 392 Buncees, but Coffee Talk's probably not that long.
Well, you equate it like Saturday Night Live. It could be, we could just take the whole show could just be like that whole length.
Yeah.
But it's hard to stop chopping.
Well, I saw this one, and here's the first time I used that lamp.
Okay.
So there's that lamp again. But you wouldn't realize it, when you're looking at it. So just the ways that you can use and the graphics in Buncee, they're just phenomenal. In fact, I don't know that I really use anything from the web, because this is the one.
Okay.
And it was one of those where I was like, okay, how do I do this? I can do the failure. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to recreate that on the other side. And again, seems simple, but it was this process of really thinking about, how do I represent the idea of failure, and then trying it again and succeeding.
Yeah. And I love that quote too. Like, and that's the thing for me, you know, obviously I love quotes, everything I read, I
Yeah.
try and write them down. I haven't been so good about that lately because I'm reading, but I'm reading in a space where I don't actually have paper, but I really appreciate that you're sharing all of these quotes too, because those lead me to be more reflective. And that's not something that I ever did for many years of teaching. So I wasn't creative because I, you know, didn't have the right form or the right medium, I guess you could say. And for students now, just to see, like, some of mine now are doing the About Me Buncees. And, you
Yep.
know, I look at my very first one and I mean, it was bad, but the growth and, you know, you keep pushing yourself to try different things and to look for new innovative ways to use a lamp to create something in your Buncees. And so it's, I think, and I know that when people watch this, they're going to be like, wow, like I never thought about that. And you have all of these other ideas that you're sharing. So that's the point of our coffee talks, is like share and then just keep adding new ideas for everybody.
Well, and then I do take these graphics, and one thing I try to do on Twitter is to now take that quote and graphic, and then I ask some kind of question. And you know, like this one, I don't remember what I put. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. I think I said something on Twitter when I posted this, like, what role does failure play in your life? Just to try to get people thinking about it, because I think every one of these quotes, I pick them because I think it has some relationship to education or to us as, I mean, simply human beings. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you are in school or not. This can apply to somebody. This could apply to my parents who are in their 70s.
Right.
You know, what role does failure play? And I think it's worth, self-reflection is so important in our field. And I think just in the act of being human. And so I want to do more than just put a quote out there, but try to get people to think about, okay, so what does that mean? And then I think it helps build empathy if there are people who answer that differently. You know, you
Right.
start seeing different responses and you're like, oh, I never thought about that. And that's a different way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, totally agree. And the reflective piece is huge. And it's things I wish I knew like a long time ago in my career. But I think a lot of it, and even with creating too, I mean, it comes down to doing things differently and, you know, stepping out of your comfort zone and just trying it. And when it comes to technology, I know not everybody's comfortable with it. They think, you know, is there a big learning curve that comes with it, or is it hard to navigate? And I don't know all there is to know about creating with Buncee or whatever we're using, but like, you don't have to, right? You just got to
no,
start. And then like, if it working with students, let them go. And then like, I get the best ideas from them. I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. Like, that's what I love about teaching, is that like we're sharing our knowledge, but the amount that we learn from those we're working with is just so far, it's so much more.
yeah.
And just from you, talking to you today, like I'm thinking I need to go back and look at all of my Buncees because I really need to improve some of them, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that I would agree that you need to go back and improve them. And I understand where you're coming from, but it's like, that is, we use it for what we use it for. And, you know, I've made that decision that this is what I'm going to do every morning to kind of ground myself. And it has become something. I mean, it's funny. It's almost like the Where's Waldo. When I see a new graph, I love going in and seeing all the new stuff. And I start thinking, okay, I don't know that I'm ever going to do one about London, a quote with London itself, but I start looking at, oh, there's the Ferris wheel that's put in, and there's Big Ben. I could actually use the top of Big Ben. I don't even have to have the whole Big Ben. If I need this, it can be something that I use later on. And that, like I said, that to me is the fun of it.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I do get very excited when I see like new things that have been added in there, because sometimes I'll want to search for something and then I get completely distracted because there's all of these great new graphics and backgrounds to choose
Yep.
from, and just so many things in the library. Yeah, it's like it's hard to stop once you start creating with Buncee. Um, so if you were to give advice to somebody about, you know, how to get started, or like if they're looking for an idea and they think, oh, I don't know where to start with Buncee, you know, what is something that you might tell somebody, or maybe they're just hesitant to try something different like this?
Yeah, I mean, my number one piece of advice, and it doesn't work all the time, is just try it. Just
Mm-hmm.
open it up and just start, have no reason to do it other than just open it up and start adding things and move things around. You're not going to hurt anything. But I think with students, it's like if you have that time when, like, I am not saying that writing is not important. So I don't want anybody to think I'm saying writing is not important. But it seems like a lot of times at the start of class, here's a question, I want you to write on it. And as a student, I think we all the time, we get tired of the same old thing every time. So to me, it's like, try something different. If the kids read a story, have them open it up, and at the beginning of class, they've got 5 minutes to make a Buncee that represents their thought about the short story or the nonfiction piece, or I mean, whatever it is, have them visually represent, that visible learning, and see what happens. And it may be that the kids don't, kids are pretty finicky sometimes. And it's like, no, I don't like that. I don't like that. Okay.
Right.
So a couple of days from now, do the same thing, or have them take what they did before and do something different with it. And I mean, I think just that would be my advice, is use Buncee as another tool. I'm not suggesting that I think Buncee could be used as the only tool, but it's one tool that you have in your toolbox. And there will be some kids that will latch onto it and they will love it. And there will be others that still prefer, oh no, I'd rather use Apple Clips, right? I mean, again, it's just trying different things. I mean, I put out a Buncee, I don't know, a while ago about storytelling, and, make the Buncee your and I don't know if I can find it here, but the idea of storytelling and making it so, like this one, like if you want the kids to write, you could go in and have kids, okay, here's the backdrop. So now I want you to start writing a story with this backdrop, and then have kids be able to, okay, now we're going to add another element. And a kid decides they want to add that element. Okay, how does that change your story? I mean, to me, any of those types of things are going to engage kids in whatever standard you're working on. If it's a writing standard, you don't have to, every part of that doesn't have to be writing. It can be using Buncee to help further that, and letting kids, you come up with your story. Now start putting in well, I guess I didn't have an example, but start plopping in things into that, and that's kind of the setting. And so the person that gets your written story now has this kind of graphical representation. There's just, I think, endless ways of being able to use this platform.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Endless possibilities for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, they ought to use that.
Maybe they do.
Yeah, they do.
You could, I know. No, well, thank you for sharing all of that, and the process that you go through every morning, and how it's just amazing to see. It's always interesting to see how people create, because everybody's so different. And like for me, when I create, a graphic for a conference, or I've created like lessons for my students or whatever, I have a process that I go through, that I search. But I think I need to really focus on maybe looking at different objects and trying to, do what you've done in this, just to, I don't know, spread my wings a little bit with it.
Yep. And that's the fun part, is just starting to realize, hey, you can use this thing for, I mean, it's the same, okay, I've got a paper clip. What can you use a paper clip for? It's that same activity, but it's digital. What can I use this lamp for? What can I use this staircase for? That's not really, it's not even I don't want a staircase, but it's a staircase. So how can I use that? And turning it upside down and visualizing it differently, I think it has truly, I mean, I can't prove it. It has changed my brain. I mean, it has that whole growth mindset. It has rewired it. And I just look at the world differently now. So, and I mean, it was Buncee for me. It was Buncee that I think has helped me to do that.
Yeah. And I think now because you're looking at the world differently, we have so many other people, including myself, looking at the world differently too, because we're, through what you're sharing. So for that, I thank you. And I also thank you for joining in on Coffee Talk today. It's always fun to talk with the ambassadors and just to see all the unique ways and authentic ways they're using it. So thank
Well,
you.
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. See you next time, everybody.